Well, good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. It is Tuesday, November the 10th, and welcome once again to our weekly Tiger Club Zoom meeting. Before we start today, we'd like to salute our veterans on the eve of Veterans Day, and everybody out there who has served in the armed forces, we salute you. Also like to thank Darren Wydick for monitoring these, setting up and these Zoom calls, and he's our engineer on this, and of course, Paul Blackman for lining up our guests each week. He does a great job. As Darren said, our guest today is Howard Richards, radio analyst on the Tiger Football Network for Learfield Communications. Howard was a two-time All-Big Eight and All-American offensive tackle for the Tigers in the late 70s, early 80s, went on to a 7-year NFL career, mostly with the Dallas Cowboys. He was first-round draft pick in 1981. And then he spent 13 years with the CIA. And I think, Howard, this is your 10th year doing Tiger football. Am I correct on that?
You are correct. First of all, pleasure to be with you guys again this year, albeit by Zoom. But nonetheless, it's always great to talk to this club. You guys are very knowledgeable and I think very laid back, reasonable fans. So sometimes the folks over in St. Louis can be a little rowdy at times, especially on social media. But I can't say that about my KC folks. So again, it's a pleasure to be with you all today.
Well, we're delighted to have you. And Howard, of course, has been a great ambassador for the university over the years. He's been a distinguished alumni award winner and a faculty alumni award winner. And we are really pleased to have you here. Let's talk about the Tigers. Halfway through the season, I'm going to ask you a broad question. What's your assessment at this point?
So I have been, at times, I've been very impressed with what I have seen. I think this team is on the verge of changing its culture and growing up a lot. I think from what I've seen, especially early on, I'm not just talking strictly football here. I'm talking about from a program and a culture standpoint. I see a different team that I've seen the last few years. I feel as though this team is more together. And I think that is a direct reflection to what Coach Eli Drinkwitz has brought to the university and to the football program. You kind of feel that amongst the players too. They seem to be really working harder. I know that, and again, this is not a knock against Barry Odom's regime. I just think it's different under a new head coach. I went through the same thing with a new head coach in 1978 under Warren Powers. So it's just different. And I think the players are energized. I will say also that especially thrilled with what Eli's been able to do in the face of so much adversity that he has faced in his first year, with COVID knocking out spring ball, with, again, like everyone else, your summer sessions are limited, your interactions is limited. You start fall camp under, just a lot of unknowns. If there's going to be a season, will it start? If it starts, will it stop? How do you handle these multiple cases of COVID when guys get sick or when they're stricken with it? And even those that aren't stricken with it, they've got to quarantine because of contact tracing and all that. So in spite of that, I think he has managed very, very well. And the guys that have been able to get on the field, even though in some cases they're not the starters or the best players, they've managed to, I think, give a tremendous effort. So I've been pleased with that. Now, if you look at Missouri's 2 wins, I think that, especially the win against Kentucky, for Missouri, I think it was, if you take away that, I think 6 penalties in that game, that was probably about as perfect a performance as you're going to get from this team that I've seen in a long time, offensively and defensively, and special teams also. And that carryover, they elevated their play from the LSU game. I think they were inspired. I think the week in between LSU and Kentucky helped. Now, if you look at the losses, not counting the Alabama game, but the loss to Tennessee, the loss to Florida, there's a common theme in those losses. And I think they reverted back to bad fundamentals, missed tackles, bad execution offensively, dropped passes, too many mental mistakes on the field, turnovers. And all those things show up, and they show up in the form of losses because this team isn't quite good enough to overcome that much adversity at once. When they learn how to put those things behind it, that's when I think you'll see this program truly turn a corner. And I firmly believe that they're going to do this under Coach Drinkwitz. There's just something special about him, the way he communicates with players, the way he communicates his vision. I think we are poised to have a solid football program, for however long he's going to be the head coach.
Don't forget, after we get done visiting with Howard, you can ask him questions via chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Howard, a few individuals I'd like to talk about. A guy that's really stood out to me so far is Nick Bolton. I don't think he's been 100% all year, but he is playing like a first-team All-American. Is he an NFL prospect?
He is in my mind. If I were drafting NFL talent coming out of the college ranks, he'd be at the top of my boards. Not just because of the way he plays, but his attitude. He's consistent. He shows up. He's got great leadership skills. He's the type of player you want to build a program around. And he's exciting. I mean, he brings enthusiasm to that defense, and his play has been infectious at times. And I think you have to have that type of leadership on your football team. And Nick, to me, he exhibits that week in and week out, and he always has since he's been a Tiger. So lucky to have a guy like that leading your defense, and I think he will eventually elevate the play of the other players around him.
Connor Basilak stepped into the starting position at quarterback in his third game. Of course, had a breakout game against LSU. Played, I thought, pretty well against Kentucky, made some key third down plays, struggled a little bit against Florida. But overall, I think he's had a great season so far for a freshman.
Agreed. He's got a really good command of the offense. And I don't believe we've seen, but a portion of that playbook. I think his skill set enables this team to do a lot of things that it probably could not do with Sean Robinson or any other starter. Connor's he has shown to me tremendous poise, especially under pressure. Not to say that he's been perfect. He's missed a couple of throws, not a lot though. I think he's going to learn to see the field even better once the game slows down even more for him. It's interesting. He ran a wishbone offense in college. And you would think, wow, how, running a wishbone offense, you don't throw the ball that much. But that doesn't mean that he's not capable of throwing it. Somewhere along the line, his skill set developed, and he learned how to be a good passer. And some guys are just, that's an innate talent. And I think that is, that's with him. What running a wishbone offense has done for him, though, his ball handling skills are really good. There are times when he's executed fakes in the run game where, I've been fooled. And and you can see it on the defense because they've been fooled as well. So he's got a good command of the position. And I just think that barring anything unusual, he's going to continue to improve. And you just hope that the players around him, the receivers, become more consistent as they develop, especially the younger players. But that comes with, to me, you work on those little things before practice and after practice. You can't, in this sport, you can't rely on everything getting done in the meeting rooms and on the practice field. There is a lot of initiative that you have to take as a player to constantly work on your game. And to me, that's how the good players perform regularly well, from week in and week out.
One of my favorite statistics of the season for one game was Larry Roundtree carried the ball 37 times against Kentucky, and Kentucky ran 36 plays. That was old school to see a running back get that many touches in a game. He's a tough guy, Roundtree.
If you go back to the first year that Mizzou was in the SEC, and we're preparing to play Georgia, and Sheldon Richardson made the infamous comment about being old man football. Well, that was old man football that we saw Missouri play against the Kentucky Wildcats. Basically, Missouri flipped the script and beat Kentucky at its own game with ball control, and kept it away from that Kentucky offense, which we all felt, we knew that they're somewhat one-dimensional anyway, but no one, including me, would have ever guessed that Missouri would have had as much success stopping the run game against them. But Roundtree and his offensive line mates, they got it done. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. And I say that as an offensive lineman because, that's your bread and butter. You love to be able to control the game by running the football and knocking guys out of the way and creating big running lanes for your running backs. And that's what they did. And the thing about Roundtree is that he gets stronger as the game progresses. He's a guy, to me, that needs to have, no fewer than 20 touches a game. And if he's getting the ball that much, then Missouri's doing well. And I think that he's going to get those tough yards for you. I say this often. He'll run through tackles. He'll run through arm tackles. And I see a lot of guys try to tackle these big backs in the SEC, and they're just too strong for it. And he knows that, and he knows that one guy, it's going to be hard for one guy to bring him down. So always keeping his legs moving, keeps his eyes downfield. He's just proven solid, and at some point during this Georgia game, he's going to become Missouri's all-time leading rusher as a running back. We all know that Brad Smith holds that record, the overall record for total yards as a runner, but at the quarterback position. But Roundtree he'll break that record on Saturday against Georgia. I'm confident of that.
Going to your old area, the offensive line, Larry Borum's played well. Case Cooks played really well, but they go into this game this weekend with only 9 scholarship offensive linemen. And it looks like Borum's out and Xavier Delgado's out. 2 questions. What do you think of the offensive line play so far? And how will they fare against Georgia with a rather beat up crew?
First of all, 9 scholarship players. If you compare it to the NFL, that's kind of a luxury to have that many. There's teams that play with 6 and 7, but to your point, his offensive line has shown to me a lot of improvement, but also there are a lot of areas where they can actually play better. Again, going back to the 2 wins, I thought the line protected Basilak very well, and they were consistently stretching the field and opening running lanes for both Tyler Beatty and Larry Roundtree. But there's the problem when you've got guys hurt, and of course you mentioned Borum and Delgado. They've been out for a while, and hopefully Missouri will get them back the following week. You would have liked to have had that line at full strength playing against Georgia, but that's not to be. But they've had, they've known this for a while, and they've had an additional week of preparation for the younger players to step in and start. I actually just starting my preparation for Georgia, so I haven't even looked at the depth chart to see who's going to be up. But whoever it is, I think you can really give a lot of credit to offensive line coach Marcus Johnson for managing, the difficulties that the offensive line has had this year, shoveling in so many different players. And that's a hard thing to do. To be successful offensively and to be consistent, especially on the line, you have to have 5 guys that are playing together all the time. There's a lot of communication that goes on between the players. And it's different when you have a new guy that's in there that's not used to it. There's a feel thing, if you will, from guys on either side of you. You're used to one player, whether you're combo blocking someone or pass blocking, either area blocking or man blocking something. You're just used to that guy that's next to you. Now, when someone else steps in there, that feel is different. So it takes a while to get used to that. You don't get used to that in a few practices. It takes, weeks to be able to accomplish that type of continuity. So, but that said, this is the hand that they've been dealt with, and they're just going to have to manage it as best they can. But I think what we're seeing in some areas, there is gradual improvement. It was a good first half against Florida. I mean, Missouri's in that football game until the self-destruction started. They start beating themselves with all the mental mistakes. And again, those are the things that have to be avoided. The fundamentals sometimes when you get tired, especially as an offensive lineman, you revert back to bad footwork. You get your head down and you get beat quick off the line of scrimmage. Those are the things I look for, and those are the things that, as a young offensive lineman, you've got to work very, very hard to correct. So it's a learning experience, but I think these guys are well positioned for the future, along with some other additions that will be joining this team in the future. You've probably heard about the transfer from OU. I can't think of his name, the offensive lineman, but he was a 4 or 5-star offensive lineman. So hopefully he will be a good addition to the team, and he'll have, I believe, 4 years of eligibility beginning in 2021. So they're building for the future, and this is the thing that Eli will see how good he is when he gets all of his players at every position, instead of just the players that he inherited, because coaching staffs differ from areas of need, and Drinkwitz's emphasis is different than Odom's was. So excited to see how this team progresses and how they evolve from year to year. I'm not giving up on 2020 by any stretch. Even if you give Georgia the win on Saturday, Missouri can still finish 6-4. That would be remarkable given what has happened with all the adversity, again, as I've mentioned, throughout the season. But the way Georgia played against Florida, how do they rebound? How will they fare? What's their quarterback situation? We saw a defense that was highly regarded as the best or one of the best in the nation. They didn't look like that on Saturday. So what Georgia team will Missouri face on Saturday? That remains to be seen. But Missouri controls what it can control. If Missouri plays its very best, they can be competitive with any team that it plays.
I think Georgia comes in a 12-point favorite. I was reading their coach Kirby Smart's from his press conference yesterday. They're really banged up. Their All-American safety, Richard LeCount, was injured in a motorcycle accident or some kind of off the field deal. He's out for several weeks. Their nose tackle, Jordan Davis, is out. as you said, their quarterbacks, Stetson Barrett the fourth or Thurston Howell the third, whatever his name, he may be questionable. And they're talking about they could go with any of three other guys at quarterback. It's a tough call for the Tigers, but I kind of think we might have a shot.
No, Mark, realistically speaking, again, Missouri does have a shot. But it only has a shot if they play like they played against Kentucky and LSU and the first half of Florida. It's got to be aggressive. Guys have got to get to their spots. This game is a mental game. And I cannot emphasize enough what that means. As a student athlete, you have so many distractions. Maybe fewer distractions this year with many classes being online, of course. So you're not on campus. You don't have, with all the restrictions with COVID, it's a little different. It's a lot different this year. But just being a student athlete, there's so much to worry about. You've got to worry about classes. But at some point, individual responsibility comes into play. You know why you're here. You know that your ability, your skill set was good enough to earn you a football scholarship to play at this institution. You know that if you're a starter or a young man that's going to be playing a lot rides on what you do. And this is, in my opinion, this is where successful programs, the blue blood programs, are so good, because that culture that they have bred and your players buy into that. That's where the mental toughness aspects, because you have an expectation that you have to live up to. So it is imperative that the younger players coming in understand that. I don't know how many of these young guys, depending on the programs they were in high school, I don't know that how many of them understand the mental aspect of this game. But those that grasp it the quickest are the ones that are going to be the most successful. So I just hope, and I'm confident that the things that I've heard from Eli and the coaches that I've talked to, they have, to me, a playbook that speaks to that. So I know it's there. Now it just takes the individual student athlete to buy into that and to learn how to become mentally tough. You do that, well, you have, trust me, you have gone a long way to positioning yourself to be successful week in and week out.
News from around the SEC the last couple of days related to COVID. Auburn, Mississippi State postponed this week. Head coach at Arkansas, Sam Pittman, he's tested positive. I guess Barry Odom's going to be the interim coach this week. And then I saw this morning Texas A&M's had an outbreak among several players. How is your procedure calling games? What protocols and protections have you taken in working the booth this year?
Well, along with all the other guys on our team, and that includes obviously Mike Kelly, Chris Trevino, our producer Scotty Cox, and our engineer Matt Weingartner. We all know each other very well, and we have essentially kind of before the season started stressed the importance of being responsible to each other, knowing that there are some broadcast groups that are not traveling this year. But I think we've all have been personally responsible in, managing COVID around us, just limiting our activities, limiting our exposures, to large groups of people. So that it's been, and I know many people that have had COVID. I mean, my daughter had it in July, but I wouldn't let her come home until she got a couple of negative tests. And, I just had to stress and emphasize to folks that I'm limiting the people that I'm around because of that, because of the responsibility of being part of a broadcast team and the need to be there, week to week. to fulfill our duties. And I think we all have that commitment as far as broadcasting is concerned. We all wear our masks when we're outside of the booth. So everyone has been very vigilant about following the rules. So obviously, you can't prevent it, but you can use as many precautions as possible. And I think we all do that. We get into the booth and we all have our wipes, and we're wiping down stuff and using hand sanitizer, just doing all the things that we can to make it as safe and healthy as possible. I know it's a long-winded answer for that, but that's how we've managed it, Mark.
Well, one of our questions on chat, Gary Barnett told us when we had him on a couple of weeks ago, he would broadcast Colorado home games from their press box at Folsom Field, away games from his home in Scottsdale. You are going on the road then with the Tigers on the away games, and are you traveling, team playing and everything?
We do not travel with the team, and I think that's why. It's obviously with if you want to create your own little quote unquote bubble within your team, even limiting donors on your planes, staff, and your broadcast crew that are not with your team day to day, it's smart not to do so. So yes, we travel to road games. We travel commercially and not on the charters.
I want to talk about your last call at the LSU win when you and Mike Kelly on the goal line stand. I thought you guys were going to jump out of the booth. I've listened to that several times. What was the feeling on that last call? You guys did a great job. It was very exciting.
Thank you. We were all, literally on the edges of our seats, just wondering. You think, oh my, how is this going to end? And there were opportunities, especially Terrence Marshall Jr., who that final pass was intended for, I think he had caught, I don't know how many balls, but well over 200 yards receiving. I think everyone in the stadium knew the ball was going to him, but I think it was Josh Bledsoe that stepped up it was Bledsoe. Bledsoe stepped up and he made a hell of a play. It was a big league play. But it took me back to September 10th, 1978 in South Bend, that infamous goal line stand that Mizzou had to shut down Joe Montana and the Fighting Irish. And it was, that's all I can think about. It just reminded me of that time, that feeling. I just wish there had been more people in the stands to have witnessed it, because it was a great moment for Missouri football. I was happy for Eli to get his first win. You're knocking off not only a ranked opponent, but it was a defending national champion. Now, we've seen LSU as probably not the team that everyone thought they might be coming out of the chute. But at that moment, that meant a lot. And I thought it was a great day for the players, to get a taste of that early on in the season, to know that if you play to your capabilities, then you give yourself a chance to, play some good football and to win games that way. That's what it takes. Playing every play to the final whistle. That was literally the last play of the game. And that's where it has to be. You've got to be alert and aware, because that moment can come at any time. So I'm hopeful for many more moments like that from this group. But yeah, it was exciting. Our engineer sent me that call. So, and of course, for those that don't know, you can now watch, especially during home games, you can watch our broadcast. We stream from the booth. So it was especially exciting for a lot of people saw it. They commented how much they enjoyed watching it and seeing us get excited also, because we do. Games like that keep us, happy and into the football game also. It's easier to talk about things outside of, conversely, if your team's not playing well and you've just got to have, material to sort of fill to until the time expires. So it was a great day.
You talked about that Notre Dame game. Our next question is, what was your best memory of that game? Of course, that was Warren Power's first game, your sophomore season. You and Tigers won 3-0 against defending national champs. So there is a fair comparison. Any other plays specifically stick out in that game for you?
In that game, no. I just remember how hot it was.
Yes.
And it was just a battle. I can't remember any specific plays about that one. Now, there are other games where I can. For whatever reason, that one is just a blur. But what I remember most about, two things I remember most: flying back. Well, the locker room scene was just, it was just incredible. The celebration, the jubilation, I had never experienced it on that level. And that was my fifth start as a player at Mizzou. But then flying back into Columbia, there were several hundred people at the airport to greet the plane, and then later on that evening, to see the goalposts being paraded down Broadway. that was special. And I said to myself then, if this is what college football is like, then this is going to be, I'm going to love this experience. So we had a few more moments like that. Of course, ending the season against Nebraska, knocking them out of the chance to become national champions. So that was big for us. I don't remember the last time Missouri had beaten Nebraska, but that was a big win for Coach Powers, going against Tom Osborne, who he coached for a number of years. It was a big win for the program, and it positioned us for a number of years afterwards. We kind of looked at that team as sort of the team that brought Missouri football back, because I think Missouri went to then 5 straight bowl games, and hadn't been to a bowl game since 1973 when we went to that Liberty Bowl. So that was special. That was a special moment, and I would love to be able for this team to have that same sort of experience, and for the fans to be able to experience that excitement and that glory as well.
I saw a projection today that had Missouri in the Las Vegas Bowl. Wouldn't you know it, the year we can't travel, we'd go to Las Vegas. But anyway, another question. Why do you think Tyler Beatty had been more involved in the offense the last 2 games?
I think Tyler's been beat up. And I heard references to that from Roundtree some time ago. And oftentimes what you're doing offensively kind of dictates that. There are packages for all these players. But I do believe that Eli's got to be able to involve Beatty as much as he possibly can. If you look at how Florida uses the backs out of the backfield in the receiving game, and we know Beatty's a very good receiver, I think you give yourself that much more opportunity to do so. Now, there have been times also that Beatty has been open and Connor hasn't seen him open. So there have been some misses there too. Again, that goes back to him surveying the field, looking at his checkdowns and all of his options, and just making sure that he's covered all of his bases. But Tyler Beatty, to me, can get it done from that position. I just think they've got to figure out a way to get him more involved. By the same token, I think Missouri's best chances to win consistently come from balance offensively. You need a mix, 50-50, 60-40, run pass run balance to win in this league. And I think if they can do that, then 4 to 5 more wins is not impossible for this team.
Next question. Once the pandemic gets behind us, what, if any, facility upgrades does a football program need?
I think the thing that stands out the most, from what I recall, I think is improving or replacing the artificial surface at Faurot Field. Another thing that they've talked about, and I see my buddy Susan McNay on the call also, she can probably speak to this too. Hey, Susan. is adding lights to the practice field. Mark, if you remember, for those that don't know, where it's the facility called the Matseals, it's on the opposite side of Providence from the stadium. That's where the football team practices. There are 3 football fields there. They added a turf field there, which was good, but you also want to add lights and a stationary video tower. Because, tragically, there was a kid at, I think it was Notre Dame, that was killed because of a windstorm. So you want everyone to be as safe as possible. And it gets a little windy up on those scissors lifts. And I know there are other ways that they can address that, but if you can add lights to your practice facility, it helps you, especially now that we're on standard time. It helps your players, if you can practice in the evenings, adjust to playing under lights. When I came to Mizzou, I had only played one night game, so it was different. And imagine if you're a skill player, you've got to learn how to navigate looking into artificial lighting. And a lot of people don't think of those things, but they're very important to do so. Also, I think Eli wants a full-size indoor facility. You think, wow, they've got that facility over there. It's great, and it is. But you need to simulate real game experiences as closely as you possibly can. So having a new indoor facility is, it keeps you on par with what your competitors are doing. And let's face it, it is an arms race. That helps in recruiting, of course, but it gives you that it puts you on equal playing ground with teams in your conference that you're playing against, and you've got to be able to keep pace with what everyone else is doing if you want to be able to position yourself to win.
Question. Last year, you shared a story with Stephen St. John and Nate Bukaty on Sports Radio 810 about meeting Nelson Mandela. Can we hear that again?
Sure. So at the time, I was on the protective detail for John Deutsch, who was CIA director then. He's also a former Secretary of Defense. And we had been on a 5-country swing in Africa, starting West Africa, South Africa, and then finishing on the eastern part of Africa. So I didn't realize that at the time, meeting President Mandela wasn't even on our schedule. So we didn't find out until the night that we landed, it was Friday night, that the president had agreed to meet with Director Deutsch. So we were staying in Pretoria, got up Saturday morning about 6, went wheels up at 7, got to Cape Town, which is where their version of the White House is in South Africa. Got to the residence just before 9 a.m. And as our motorcade was pulling up, what I remember is that compound sits lower than the road. Sits sort of in a valley. So as we're driving up and getting out of our vehicles, I got a call on the radio from one of my colleagues saying that the director wanted to see me. So I hustled down the road and went up to him and asked him, "Yes, sir. What do you need?" And he says, and John Deutsch, if you know him, I mean, he's a big man. He's not quite as tall as I am, but he's a big guy. Whenever he wanted to make a point or emphasize something, he'd take his finger and he would touch you like right on the chest like this. And he would just tap me like 3 or 4 times. He goes, "I want you in the meeting room with me." And he was like that with the guys that he liked. And so I said, "Well, I'll be inside the building. I'll be just outside the doorway." And he goes, No, you don't understand. I want you in the meeting room, the actual meeting room when we meet President Mandela. And so I just kind of Okay, you're the boss. So I, took off my firearm and handed it over to one of my coworkers and proceeded inside. So we're sitting inside about 10 minutes or so, and inside of this particular meeting room, there was a staircase. And in 10 minutes, all of a sudden, you could see these bare legs descending the staircase. And sure enough, it was President Mandela, who looked very frail. Well, I'll say frail, looked very thin. Obviously, I mean, he was approaching 90 years old, I think. But he was different than I had imagined him from all the pictures that I had seen. Much smaller man. Nonetheless, it was a tremendous experience. So we kind of formed I think there were 8 of us in the room. The director, his immediate staff, my boss, and me. So we had like a modified receiving line. So he's going down the line, shaking hands, greeting everyone, welcoming everyone to South Africa. Then he gets to me, grabs my hand with both of his hands and kind of looks me up and down. And he said, "My goodness, you must have played basketball." And I politely corrected him and said, "No, sir, I played American football." And he said, "Nonetheless, welcome to South Africa." So that was a very special moment. Flying back to the US, Deutsch comes up to me on the plane and he says, you know why I asked you to join the meeting? And I said, I have an idea, but why don't you just tell me? And he goes, "Look around." And I was the only African-American on the detail. He goes, "You're the only one in this group that understands what Nelson Mandela meant to the world." And I respect Deutsch so much for that. I mean, I respected him anyway. But for all the things that he could have been thinking about and for all the issues and concerns that he had, in that moment, for him to think about me and to invite me in to meet this, this larger than life historical figure, just to me spoke volumes about Deutsch as a person. And I'll never forget that. I will always remember that day, and I'm forever grateful to him for inviting me in.
That is a great story. Last question. Basically, I understand the concept of quality control in manufacturing, but not so much on a football staff. What does it mean to have a quality control coach, and how is it different from what we used to call advanced scouting, like Clay Cooper?
I have no idea. No. I will say this, it's quite complicated, and I can't tell you that I have had lots of instances where I've sat in and watched and understood everything that quality control does. It's far more advanced than advanced scouting is, but that whole group, to simplify it, they will break down film. So they'll watch film and break down your opponent, offensively down a distance. So that on first down, because of the 250 plays they've run, they have run or a group of these plays from this formation. So you know what to expect on certain downs and distances. And the same thing with, short yardage and goal line. The same thing with third and medium yardage, 3, 4, 5, third and 10, third and 10 plus, third and 20 plus. So film is broken down that way. And then it used to be, and I think it's still done the same way, but different teams, like for instance at Dallas, they'll spit all that data into a computer and you get this printout. And that's how you then game plan based on, what quality control tells you. Now, there are other facets of that. The guys that are in the booth are looking at formations as plays happen. They're looking at blitzes. They're looking to see if if you're looking at a team's defense, they're looking to see if the blitz trends are the same, if they're more or if they're less. They're also looking at what's different from the particular scouting report from that week and relaying that information back to the sideline because they've got a broader view of the field. You're on the sideline, you don't see a whole lot. It's a limited point of view. Even as a broadcaster, my seat is on the 49-yard line. There are other stadiums where our broadcast booth is positioned, sometimes it's on the 20. In AT&T Stadium where the Dallas Cowboys play, we had the opportunity to broadcast from the home broadcast team's booth, where Brad Sham and Dave Laufenberg broadcast from. And that is almost an end zone view. It's like the 5 or 10-yard line. So in addition to the 60-yard HD TV screen, you're seeing the field from, you get to see more formations, full formations, and you're getting to see more depth perception. So you can see more footwork from your offensive linemen. You can see stunts better. So those are the things that your quality control people, that's why there's so many of them. They get a chance to look at so many different facets. You have X amount that work on offense, X amounts that work with the defense, and the same with special teams. So they're looking and assisting, giving you different extra sets of eyes during the course of a game. And that's game day. But all the other things, they're preparing that game plan and trying to find as many areas that you can exploit your opponent's weaknesses with. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what quality control, quality assurance, whatever you want to call it, that's what they're responsible for.
Well, Howard, you bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of great experience. I look forward to you publishing your memoir about your professional career and your life in the CIA and in the booth at Tigers. Thank you so much for spending your day with us.
Guys, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Darren for his friendship and his expertise. My friend Susan, I miss seeing you all the time, but glad you are here and running things. And we'll have to talk offline about all the other stuff that's happening in this world. So good to see everyone. Pleasure to be with you. Look forward to joining you again sometime next year.
And hopefully at the flea market, we'll buy you burgers. So
absolutely.
All right, Howard Richards. You can watch this again on YouTube. It'll be posted the next day. Please spread the word among everybody. We'd like to increase the number of people viewing all our Zoom meetings, and of course, increase membership. That's really our only source of revenue this year since we didn't get to have a golf tournament. So we really need your support. Next week will be Sam Mellinger, the columnist of the Kansas City Star. And in 2 weeks, we'll have Howard's cohort, Mike Kelly, will be our guest speaker. So a lot to look forward to coming up. If you're interested in tickets or parking passes for this week's game against Georgia and the other upcoming home games, make sure you send an email to president@kctigerclub.com. And as always, for club information, log on to our website at kctigerclub.com. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next week with Sam Mellinger.